Welcome to another makeup video. My name is Angie and today we're going to be testing out the Rare Beauty Soft Pinch Liquid Contour versus the E.L.F. Camo Liquid Contour and Bronzers. Let's get into it. So I wanted to compare these two products to see which one's better, how they're different, and what to watch out for if you're deciding between the two. So for Rare Beauty, these are $39 at Sephora. They come with 0.50 ounces, and if you do the calculation for a full ounce cost, they cost about $78. For the E.L.F. Camo Liquid Contour and Bronzers, these retail anywhere from $9 to $10 depending on where you purchase it from. I've seen them as low as $9 on the E.L.F. website and as high as $9.99 on Shoppers Drug Mart. And this comes with 0.13 ounces. They cost $76.85 for a full ounce. So interestingly enough, if you do the full ounce cost calculations for both of these products, they do end up being similar prices, but the Rare Beauty is slightly more pricier. So in the Rare Beauty formula, we have Gentle, which is the cooler tone for fair skin. And then we also have Mellow, which is a warmer shade targeted for light skin tones. And in the E.L.F. formula, we have Fair and Fair to Light. Fair is a cooler tone, whereas Fair Light is a slightly warmer tone. I'll be putting both the warmer tones on the top part of my face, and then I'll be using the cooler tones on the bottom half of my face. So on this side, we'll do Rare Beauty, and then on this side, we'll do E.L.F. And we'll see if there's a difference, if they're similar, and if there are variations between the shades. So I already have my eyes and my lips done. And I also have my base done as well, but it's not set. So for today's base, I used Haus Lab's Triclone Skin Tech Foundation in 050 Fair Cool. And then for concealer, I used the Tower 28 Serum Concealer in the shade 2BU. And I have not yet set my face with powder because I wanted to see how these blend on a wet base. And of course, you're putting wet on wet. If you put this on set foundation with setting powder, it's going to be a disaster. So both of the bronzers suggest to dot the product onto your face and then blend them out, but I prefer using them on the back of my hand and then work the product into the bristles of the brush and then apply it onto my face. So I have two clean brushes. I'll be using one for Rare Beauty and the other for E.L.F. And then I'll also be cleaning them in between shades as well. So let's start with Rare Beauty first. So I'm going to take the shade Mellow, and I'm just going to swipe this on the back of my hand. I'm just going to take my brush and work the fibers in. And then once I've worked the product into the fibers, I go on top just to see what the load is going to be like. All right, here we go. All right, there it is. That was pretty quick to blend out. So here's without, here's with. Moving on to E.L.F., we're going to be using the color Fair Light for this side. So again, just like the first shade, we're just gonna swipe this color on the back of my hand. And then I'm gonna take a clean brush and I'm gonna work the product into the fibers of the brush. Then I'm going to test it up here just to see how it's going to show up on my skin. And then we're going to apply. So right off the bat, the E.L.F. formulation isn't as pigmented as Rare Beauty, but you still get great pigment load. And you can still blend out the color really easily. And both formulations have not moved the foundation underneath. So when I'm looking at both formulas at the same time, seems like the E.L.F side is slightly rosier in tone, whereas the Rare Beauty side is leaning a little bit more neutral. All right, let's carry on with the cooler toned colors. But first I'm going to clean my brushes. All right, so now I have 2 clean brushes. We're now moving on to Rare Beauty on this side in the shade Gentle. And again, same thing, just applying it on the back of my hand before we apply it on the face. All right, let's move on to the E.L.F side. So for E.L.F, we're using the shade Fair. All right, so there are 4 shades on my face, and again, this side is for Rare Beauty, and then this side right here is for E.L.F. Warmer shades are on top, cooler toned shades are on the bottom. So when I'm looking at my face and seeing both sides, I'm noticing, like I said before, this side seems a little bit more rosy in tone, whereas this side is a bit more neutral. The cooler toned shades on the bottom along my jawline are very similar. I would say if you're trying to decide between either the Rare Beauty formula or the E.L.F formula, it really just depends on your tone preferences. So if you're slightly rosy in tone, I would go for the E.L.F shade in Fair Light for your bronzer tone. And then if you're a bit more on the neutral side, you can definitely go for the shade Mellow in the Rare Beauty formula. And as for the cooler tones, both Fair in E.L.F and Gentle for Rare Beauty, you can use either or. I guess the only defining factor would be in terms of pigmentation. So I noticed that when I was blending out the product on the back of my hand and into the fibers of the brush, the E.L.F formulation was a bit less pigmented, which I found that gave me a little bit more control in terms of placement on my face. And for Rare Beauty, because it is slightly higher in pigmentation, the application went on a little bit quicker. For me personally, I'm liking all the tones. I think it's just dependent on what sort of blush and lip color that I want to use. But if I'm going for an everyday neutral look, I think I would go for the Rare Beauty in the shade Mellow for my bronzer tone. And then I would go for E.L.F's formulation in Fair for my contour shade. All right, so there you have it. I hope you learned something new, and I hope this helps you decide on which liquid contour or bronzer to get. I hope you had fun. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you in my next video. Take care. Bye.